Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our budget Teletown Hall. I am Sybil Scarborough, and I serve on the Mayor's Governmental Affairs team, and I will be your moderator for this evening. Tonight, you will hear from the Mayor and city officials. We will also open up the phone lines because we really want to hear from you. And even in that, before we go any further, we would like to know who's on the line. So, if you're a neighborhood leader, press 1. If you are a faith leader, press 2. If you are an ACE participant, press 3. If you are a young professional, press 4. Press 5 if you're with a small business council, and press 6 if you're part of other. Again, press 1 if you're a neighborhood leader, 2 if you're a faith leader, 3 if you're with ACE, 4 if you're a young professional, 5 if you're with a small business council, and 6 if it's other. We will leave that open for about 3 more minutes. And we want you to know that at any time you can press 0 on your keypad if you would like to ask a question. We have team members standing by, and now I turn tonight's Budget Teletown Hall over to Mayor Randall Woodfin.
Hey, thank you, Sybil, and good evening to all the participants on this call. I want to thank the neighborhood leaders, the faith leaders, the ACE participants, the young professionals, the Small Business Council, and everyone else on this call. Thank you for your time tonight. As many of you all know, this morning I presented the budget to the City Council and the public, and it was a lot of pain points in this budget. So I'm not going to sugarcoat anything with you all because you're leaders just like we are. I do want to save most of the time for any questions, issues, or concerns you have. So I'm going to be brief in my remarks, and I'm going to attempt to, fuse in anything else with anything I answer to you. What I will say is this: at the root of what we do is provide basic city services with tax dollars. And our priority is to provide relief as well as quality services closest to where you live. So when you walk onto your porch and you look left or right, whether it's a dilapidated structure or overgrown lot, the funding that's put into this budget is at its level to make sure we continue to remove that blighted structure and cut that lot. When you pull out of your driveway and you drive down the street, we still have $10 million in this budget to continue our continuation of street paving and all the other basic services that are important to you closest to where you live, on your block, on your street, in your neighborhood. And so I just want you to know, even with the cuts and tough decisions we've had to make, we have not deviated from our number one priority, which is the support and investment in neighborhood revitalization. With that, Ms. Sybil, I'll turn it back over to you, and I want to spend as long as we need to on this call to answer any questions, issues, or concerns that these various folk have.
Thank you, Mayor. We want to remind everyone that you can press 0 at any time if you would like to ask a question. The first question of tonight is, Mayor, is our city going to be okay financially?
I hope so. I think we all should understand and realize that I like to describe city taxes in the form of every dollar that goes out dictates and predicts how every dollar goes out. The dollar that comes in, 82 cents of every dollar, is based off sales taxes and occupational taxes and use tax and ad valorem taxes and business license. And so there's a codependency in the city of Birmingham between business being able to be active, have employees, and have customers come in and purchase things. We know that the 2 weeks the city was shut down in March, the 4 weeks the city was shut down in April, and the few days it was shut down in May has had an adverse impact on our ability to receive taxes. If our taxes are less than every dollar that goes out, it's harder to manage that. I think we should recognize, we should hope for the best, but we should prepare for the worst. And hoping for the best, I think this community is resilient. I think our small business owners are resilient. I know our residents are resilient. But in preparing for the worst, we know the last 5 global pandemics that touched down on Earth all lasted anywhere from 12 to 18 months. Here in Birmingham, this global pandemic has only been with us 6 months. And so it is very hard to predict what is going to happen in the next 6 months or the next 12 months. We're hopeful, but we're also planning.
Thank you, Mayor. The next caller would like to know, do budget cuts affect basic city services?
The answer is no. As stated earlier at the city council meeting, when you strip down what a city government is responsible for, the city government is responsible for public safety and public infrastructure. Public safety being in the form of police, fire, and public works. Public infrastructure being in the form of, you think of stormwater, you think of streets, you think of sidewalks, you think of lights, etc. And so, no, those things will not be disrupted. Those things will continue at level. We want you to put your trash out on your trash day. It will continue to be picked up. We want you to continue to call 311 for any potholes you see, because we will continue to repair them. We want you to continue to report a dilapidated structure that's beyond repair, because we will continue to tear it down. We want you to continue to report overgrown lot, and if it's not raining, we will cut it. We will continue to pave streets. We will continue to invest in our stormwater. We will continue to provide police service at the level it is. And if you're sick or there's a fire, we'll continue to provide paramedics and fire services as needed as well. Those are basic services.
Thank you, Mayor. We want to remind everyone that you can press 0 at any time if you would like to ask a question. The next caller has a question along the lines of education and would like to know, how will our school funding be affected since children are not going back to school at this time?
So I want to start with the first part, which is an overview of how school funding works. And then I want to dive into the second part, which is because children are not physically in school. Maybe I'll start there, actually. Dr. Sullivan likes to remind everyone, so I'm gonna use his words. School will still take place. It just won't take place in the physical building. Children will still be educated. Children will receive tablets from the school system. They'll still be in front of their teachers via remote learning every single day, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And for our high school students, 8:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. Our children will still learn. Our children will still be taught. School will still take place the first 9 weeks. It's the only two things that are different is that the date has been pushed back to September 8th, and it is not in person. In that regard, as it relates to money, the school system receives its money from various sources. It receives local tax dollars, it receives state funding, and it receives federal funding. It also receives another category called CapEx dollars. And in addition to that, it receives discretionary money. So I want to speak to all four of those categories. I think we know that our school system has access to a lot of federal money, separate from what it usually gets because of CARES funding and the coronavirus. State funding is predicated on head count. And so if the Birmingham City School System's student population stays the same, then they will receive the same state funding they received last year. If their student head count increases, they will receive more money from the state. If they have less students or fewer students, then they will receive fewer dollars from the state. As it relates to local taxes, I will tell you it is the most stable of money. It's not necessarily predicated on student head count, nor is it predicated on the whims of politics in D.C. as it relates to federal dollars. There's no competition there. The local tax dollars formula is based on ad valorem property taxes. I'm happy to say that property taxes actually increased in the city limits of Birmingham. So the school system's $280+ million budget, about $101 million of it comes from local tax dollars. The city of Birmingham doesn't dictate that. It bypasses us and goes straight to the school system. But that is funding from local taxes. The other two sources of funding are discretionary funding we use at our general fund, which you all know that we cut boards and agencies this year. So the school system will not be receiving that money this year. But the good news and information I've already shared with the superintendent and the 9 board members all at the same time last week over a WebEx, so we all saw each other's faces, is CapEx dollars or capital expenditures. So every time there is more construction in the city limits of Birmingham, the more economic development we do, the more capital expenditure dollars the school system receives. We're happy to say that even though they didn't receive discretionary money out of our general fund this year, it's offset by an increase in capital expenditure dollars to the tune of, I want to say, $2.1 million given to the school system, separate from ad valorem property taxes, separate from state funding, and separate from federal dollars. When you think of CapEx, think of new projects such as the new FedEx facility that will be built on Lakeshore. Think of the new stadium that's being built. Think of the Old Century Plaza that will have a construction going on there. And all the other cranes you all see in our city, whether it's commercial or residential, multi-residential development, the school system is receiving more money the more economic development we have in the city. So their net money is not being impacted with the law.
Thank you, Mayor. The next question is, if we are raising the budget, why are services getting cut?
The city of Birmingham budget was not raised. We actually, I reported to the council today that the city had a shortfall of $62 million. And so I want you to think of your own household. If you have a certain amount of bills and you don't have the necessary money to pay for those bills, you have 2 options. You go out and you find more money in the form of a second job, or you cut expenses. How that's analogous to the city of Birmingham is we either raise taxes or we cut costs. The city of Birmingham is not in a position to raise taxes. As Lester Smith, our city's chief financial officer, likes to remind me, the city of Birmingham is already in the top 10 cities of highest sales tax in the nation. Lodging taxes in the top 10 in the nation. We can't raise our occupational taxes. They're already higher than most municipalities in the state. In addition to that, you need legislative approval. As you know, the state just approved an increase in gas tax last year. So in the middle of a global pandemic, you don't raise taxes on the backs of small business owners nor residents. So that's just out and unacceptable. So you're only left to cut expenses when you have a shortfall of $62 million. So basic services continue, but there's some other things we had to cut.
Thank you, Mayor. One of our callers would like to know, what days and how often will recycling be picked up?
As of now, recycling is still picked up only one time I apologize. I needed to clarify and make sure I gave correct information. Right now, recycling is only being picked up. We went from 2 times a month when the coronavirus started. We're still in the middle of this, although we've come out of some of it. Our new method is only to pick up recycling 1 time a month. It's the first Wednesday of each month.
Thank you, sir. The next caller would like to know about the mail service and ask, Mayor, can you do anything about the mail problem we are currently having?
Yep. I want to encourage you to vote. Be sure to vote November 3rd so we don't have to have any mail problems.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The next caller would like to know, can we still go to our libraries and rec centers? With people being furloughed, are you going to close those facilities too?
Those facilities have been closed since March. Our libraries have been closed since March. Rec centers are open. However, they have been at limited capacity since March. So March, April, May, June, July, now August, for 6 months, our libraries have been closed to the public. These 2 departments you just named also have boards. Their boards have decided, due to the coronavirus and the possible increase in spread of the global pandemic at a local level in our city facilities, their boards made a decision not to open them. that being the case, you haven't been able to go into the library since March.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. The next caller would like to know, what can I do to get an overgrown city yard mowed?
Well, the first thing I want to encourage you to call 311. Now, there are no excuses at this point. You all should know that there is new leadership in Public Works. It's under the direction of Rafter Bartley. He has a new team under him as well. In addition to that, we got our butts kicked in June and July with a lot of rain. I'm happy to say that August has not had a lot of rain. However, we were behind in cutting grass. I want you to know what the city's responsibility is, y'all, because this conversation will always continue. The city of Birmingham is responsible for cutting the right-of-ways. The city of Birmingham is responsible for cutting parks. The city of Birmingham is responsible for cutting city facilities and own city assets. The city of Birmingham is not responsible for cutting school grounds. And truthfully, these empty lots, majority of them are owned by private citizens, not the city of Birmingham. It is your neighbor who is not cutting their grass. That neighbor usually falls in the category, and I'm not afraid to say it, that neighbor usually falls in the category of an absentee landlord or a slum landlord. In that regard, we have a legal process the city has to clear in order to go onto private property to cut a private lot. The city of Birmingham, for the last 2 years, including in this budget we recommended today, has allocated about $1.2 million for the city to be able to go on once the process is clear through the legal bill and council approves it to go onto private lots. The majority of the complaints we are receiving are from private lots. There are over 30,000 vacant lots in this city. It is not realistic to think the city of Birmingham is sustainable to be in the grass cutting business. We can put a whole lot more money in cutting empty lots that don't belong to the city of Birmingham, but that would take money away from paving streets. That would take money away from repairing potholes. That would take money away from playground equipment at our parks. That would take money away from lights. So we do the best we can with city-owned properties. We contract out what we can for private lots. I said it last week. I think I did. Anytime you and your neighbors want to do something about a private lot, I promise you I won't call the police on you. And have fun and be safe.
Thank you, Mayor. If you are just joining us, we welcome you this evening to the Budget Teletown Hall, and we want to remind you that you can press 0 at any time if you would like to ask a question. This question is in reference to our neighborhood officers, and the question is, will the budget cuts also cut our neighborhood money?
You know I'm not going to war with the neighborhood officers. Y'all got y'all money. Your money's not touched. And tell the council to approve the budget so y'all can get your money faster.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Will the budget cuts affect DPW getting lots cut?
Again, no. We've actually embedded a few overtime dollars to make sure DPW can not only maintain what they have, but increase the number of days they're cutting. So they're now cutting on the weekends as well. In addition to that, they're cutting past their regular schedule. We are sending what they're cutting every day to the city councilors. I think I'll talk to Civil. We probably should communicate that information, flow down the chain via email all the way to the neighborhood officers, so you can see what's being cut on a daily basis. But I'm happy to report to you, grass is definitely being cut daily, and that information of where they're cutting, how much they're cutting, how much litter they're picking up every single day is communicated to the city council.
Thank you, sir. A caller just joining would like you to state again how much the budget will be for this year.
Lester, you want to tell me what that number is? You can just say it out loud.
$412 million.
The total budget is $412 million.
Thank you, gentlemen. The next caller would like to know, does the city have a reserve fund that they can draw from at this time? And the second part of that question is, or is that just for specific emergencies only?
The global pandemic is a classic definition. There is no other definition of a state of emergency. I want you all to know that, yes, there is a reserve fund. Also, I want you to know, yes, we drew down on it in the form of $23 million out of our reserve fund recommended to the City Council to pass.
Thank you, sir. Someone is definitely thinking ahead to next year and a little bit of football and wants to know, Mayor, if the Magic City Classic is being held over to next year, is that part of the money we're expecting in this budget?
We took the money out of the general account for the Magic City Classic. The City Council passed a $3 lodging tax ordinance. This is a separate pot of money from the general fund. It is currently sitting on $2.1 million. This funding can only be used for sports and entertainment, as well as investing in city public infrastructure. The Magic City Classic, by definition, falls into the category of sports and entertainment. We will be making a recommendation to the council, if and when this game is played in April, that the money to support and invest in the Magic City Classic comes out of this $3 lodging fee.
Thank you, Mayor. This next question is, what can faith leaders do to help in this situation?
Such an amazing question. I will tell you I have multiple answers. One, let me again take the time to pause and thank the faith leaders on this call, just for your leadership, for your prayers over the community, that extends well beyond your congregations. If our city, our state, our country, and our globe was ever in need of your leadership and prayer, now is the moment. I will tell you from a tangible standpoint, I have several things. The biggest thing is acknowledging the problem. One of the problems we have is, unfortunately, a lot of our own residents don't take pride in where they live. They're too comfortable littering. They're too comfortable dumping, etc. And so I want to say, faith leaders with your congregations, that allows you to have a lot of people. In partnership, you can partner with neighborhood leaders and just host cleanup days. I don't know, it can be twice a month, but take the area or the neighborhood your church is in and just make sure that area is clean. I mean, that's a great start. That is no cost. That's just human labor. I think if there's anything tangible you can do, as stated earlier, a lot of boards and agencies were being cut funding. So think of all the cultural assets in the city that we want our children to be able to attend. The zoo, Vulcan, the Museum of Art, and so many other arts and cultural organizations are being cut funding. As stated earlier, to the individual, to patrons, to small business owners, to corporate Birmingham, if there was ever a time to show your love via your checkbook to support boards and agencies, now is that moment. And the third thing I would say is very simple. Continue to do what you're already doing. Many of you all have just taking the lead during this time. And in the moment we're in, the only thing I've seen is leadership has been revealed. And so your character has been tested. And you continue to do things in the community where your church is, or your house of faith is. So I will just simply say the third thing is do what you're already doing, or continue to do what you're already doing.
Thank you, Mayor. The next caller would like to know, was there an approval for an increase in the budget for the police department? And if so, please explain.
There's a recommendation and for the police department. Their budget is going from $93 million to $104 million. And there's a very simple explanation. I started with the cuts. The police department received a cut of how many employees? 48. We cut 48 positions out of the police department's budget. So their budget was originally $93.4 million. We reduced their budget by $3.4 million. However, we had to bake in overtime. That was $7 million. We had to bake in equipment contracts for cameras so we can make sure when an officer is on the scene of a crime or engaging someone, the public knows what's going on, their leadership knows what's going on. And so we did a contract where all our officers have cameras. That's pretty expensive, to the tune of about $2.4 million. In addition to that, I would say the biggest cost of why they saw an increase in their budget, it had nothing to do with policing. It had everything to do with security guards in city facilities. So imagine, if you will, buildings such as City Hall, Municipal Court. Imagine buildings such as the Museum of Art, the Arlington House, the Negro Southern League Museum. Imagine Sloss Furnace, so many other city facilities. We took the security guards that were placed in these various departments and we put them all under one department, which is the police department. That's 90 people. Those 90 people have salaries, and so all of their salaries went to the police department. That is why you see the increase in the police department's budget. These are not more officers. These are not new officers. These are existing civilian security guards that have all been transferred to the police department.
Thank you, Mayor. A caller would like to know if you know that the library is still providing service for citizens.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Our next question of the day is about the budget and furloughs. The caller says the budget indicates there may be furloughs or layoffs and wants to know what departments will be included.
The furloughs were attached to departments where employees were not able to perform their normal course of work duties based on their facilities being closed because of the pandemic. They include the Arlington House, Sloss Furnace, the Birmingham Museum of Art, Crossplex, Southern Museum of Flight, our libraries, and our recreational centers.
Thank you, sir. We want to remind everyone that you can press 0 at any time if you would like to ask a question. We also understand that we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and there are so many unknowns, and there's so much that we are still adjusting to our new norm. The next caller would like to know, how do we as a city continue to function and get on the other side of this pandemic if it is affecting everything?
Well, again, I go back to just being a nerd for real and studying global pandemics. You kind of have to wait it out. You know it's not forever. 6 months is a very long time, but you realize that there can be a second wave based on historical data and information. I think we have to just be in a position, y'all, to brace for impact and prepare as best as we can in all of our decision making. Never separate the best example is how you prepare for any issues that come up in your own household. It's no different for government. It's no different than a small business. We try to save as much as we can. We hope. You never give up hope. You plan as much as you can, and you try to maintain the basic things you need, which is the most important thing. You actually have to shift your mindset from wants and focus only on needs. I'm reminded of those Christmas as a child where you got socks and a book and an apple. You didn't get the toys, right? You didn't get the extra stuff you wanted. In the times we're in right now, this is one of those years where we're only going to get socks and books and apples. We're not getting the extra stuff. So there's still something to be grateful for, and we need to remember that.
Thank you, Mayor. It's now time for us to go to our next polling question, and tonight's question is, Do you reside in the city of Birmingham? We want to know who's calling in and who we're listening to. Press 1 for yes and press 2 for no. Again, do you reside in the city of Birmingham? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no, and if you are just joining us, we welcome you to tonight's Budget Teletown Hall. A caller would like to know, what is the correct procedure to get trees away from power lines? Mayor?
Hold on 1 second so I can get you a good answer.
Okay, I'm moving on.
So I was making sure, I apologize for that delay in that answer, but I was making sure I answered that right because in my mind I was thinking that was something we could do. We advise, actually, that the resident call the utility first. That utility may be Alabama Power, it may be Spire, it may be electric or gas or a TV utility. So we suggest you call the utility first. If they tell you it's a city function, we recommend you call 311.
Thank you, Mayor. A caller would like to know, what is the process and cost for revitalization in each neighborhood?
I imagine that if we could put the entire $412 million budget into neighborhood revitalization, it still wouldn't be enough. I'll start with street paving. We know that the city of Birmingham recommended a 5-year plan over 2 years ago. And so July 1 was the start of year 3 for a 5-year street paving plan in the amount of $50 million. So just paving streets is $50 million. This year, for the 3rd year, we're meeting our goal of putting $10 million in. We put 10 in last year as well. So at the completion of year 3 towards the $50 million just for street paving, we will have completed over half of that money. I want to say close to $30 million and almost in 3 years. You then go to sidewalk repair. I don't even have a number for that. What I can tell you is that if streets are $50 million, sidewalks are probably a minimum of half of that, but I think I'm undervaluing the investments that are needed in sidewalks. You then move to stormwater, and you think of the city of Birmingham as sitting in a bowl, and we realize so many things were built on top of things, and homes were built in flood zones and all these other things. So stormwater itself, again, I don't even have a price tag, but I can tell you something we cannot afford for the entire city at one time. You then move to removing a blighted structure. I want to say the cost of removing one of these dilapidated houses is anywhere from $6,000 to $7,000 a house. What you realize is so many of them, we've been putting in at least $3.5 million. We put in $3.5 million this year. We put in $4.5 million last year, and we put in $3.5 million the year before. That has allowed us to tear down at least one a day, including, when I say one a day, literally one a day. So about 365 structures gets you about $3.5 million until you realize there are way more than 365 that need to be torn down. So as you can see, I can keep going. Neighborhood revitalization is very expensive, but you start somewhere. We're happy to say in the almost 3 years we've been in office, we put in almost $30 million towards street paving. We put in over $10 million in removing blighted structures, et cetera, et cetera. So we will continue to support neighborhood revitalization because it is the number one priority and it is the number one request from our residents.
Thank you, Mayor. And for those of you just joining us, we want you to know that the information about the budget cuts is online. You can go to www.birminghamal.gov/2021budget. And we welcome those who are just joining us and want to remind you that you can press 0 at any time if you would like to ask a question. A caller, Mayor, would like to know, what can service leaders do to help serve during this time in our city?
Service organizations, there's so much you can do. I think we've seen a significant outpouring of food giveaways And I think they've been very helpful in times where 17,000 plus people have been filed for unemployment. And I think that's been very helpful. That's a need, not a want. I think the next need we need to shift to is preparation for children starting school. The last thing we need is a parent having to choose between childcare and working. That is an unfair choice for any parent to make. And so we need to consider how can we help, how can we strike the balance between children being safe in the middle of a global pandemic, but also making sure they're educated. I don't have the answer how that looks on this phone with you, but I promise you there are people working really hard right now in conjunction with the superintendent and the school board and the community, and we'll be in a position to follow up with that information will be made public, and that'll be a great time for service organizations to join.
Thank you, Mayor. The next question. Will neighborhoods still be able to process new projects, and if they have projects waiting to go through the process, will that stop because of the budget issue?
No, neighborhood associations, I really implore you to continue the process that's in place of what you want to see in your community, in your neighborhood. I do have some good information for you. We're working on a plan where you can use, we're working on a plan for you to do two things. You can use some of your neighborhood funding to contract services to cut more lots in your neighborhood only for a third-party organization. In addition to that, we want to be creative of how an off-duty officer can be used for patrols based on you paying that off-duty officer with your neighborhood funds. So I think that's two things that as neighborhood officers you should not only be excited about, but I hope you will explore.
Thank you, Mayor. We have many of our ACE graduates on the line tonight, and we appreciate you being on the call. This question is, and it's a statement as well, it says, ACE taught participants a lot. This budget stuff is tough. This budget stuff is real. Now that we've learned how city government operates, is there anything that we can do to help?
Yes. Please go out and shop in Birmingham. I know that sounds funny and simple as the answer, but we need you to be the biggest champions of Birmingham in the form of being pro-Birmingham. Buy your gas in Birmingham. Buy your shoes in Birmingham. Eat in Birmingham. Get your hair done and cut in Birmingham. Get your nails and done in Birmingham. Buy your shoes in Birmingham. Give the collection plate in Birmingham. Be pro-Birmingham.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Birmingham, yes, buy in Birmingham. Caller would like to know, who do I get in touch with to get COVID testing as a company?
I don't know the direct answer to that question, but I will suggest that please reach out to the Jefferson County Health Department, and they have a list of information around adequate testing, where you can get tested, the process, etc.
Thank you, Mayor. Another caller is asking, what agencies can assist people having a hard time in Birmingham due to the pandemic?
Well, the JCCEO comes to mind because they have been consistent prior to the global pandemic for residents and seniors and elders and single parents who've fallen on hard times and having a hard time meeting their utility bills, etc. I think one of the biggest things all of us can do is reach out to our U.S. Senators Richard Shelby and Doug Jones. Oh gosh, that was horrible. We should reach out to our elected officials and who represent us in the federal government and ask them to continue the moratorium on evictions. We should ask them to continue the increase in unemployment insurance. We should ask them for a continuation of a host of things so that eases some of the pain and burden that our residents are facing. It's one thing for me as an elected official on your behalf to make a call, but as you know, most elected officials, when they see enough residents calling them and emailing them and writing them letters, they respond. Let our elected officials know we don't really care about Republican or Democrat. We only care about you making the right decisions on our behalf as Americans and Alabamians and Birminghamians, and do the right thing by us.
Okay, we want to remind you that you can press 0 at any time to ask a question. Please hold for just one moment. Thank you so much. The next question, it says, my question is under city-owned facilities like Railroad Park, the Railroad Park Foundation. The budget appears it has gotten cut significantly. What is the $450,000 covering for the public park for the private foundation of the railroad?
Oh, I don't know how to answer. Well, let me answer it this way. City of Birmingham has 117 parks in our city limits. 116 are 100% owned and operated by the City of Birmingham, our employees, etc. The 117th park is Railroad Park. That park is not owned by the city. However, that park has been deemed one of 3 parks that goes beyond a neighborhood park. So I want you to think, Patton Park. I want you to think Eastlake Park. These are destination parks. In that regard, this park has been deemed a city cultural asset, like Vulcan, like Ruffner Mountain, like the Botanical Gardens. In that regard, the City of Birmingham supports this organization because it's not isolated to the city's responsibility only. It has its own separate board. It has its own separate foundation. And there's a partnership and a contractual relationship between Railroad Park and the City of Birmingham where we provide certain services, including security and some forms of upkeep. And that is what that money is for. Remember the size of that park. I'm unaware outside of George Ward Park that we have that many parks, at least 4 city blocks. So that's a lot of land to maintain and upkeep over a 365-day period. So the money that's going towards that park is due to a contractual relationship between the City of Birmingham and the Railroad Park Foundation. Very similar to a contract between the City of Birmingham and the contractual relationship with the zoo, contractual relationship with Vulcan Park, a contractual relationship with many other organizations that are cultural assets in our city.
Thank you, Mayor. We want to let everyone know that you can go to www.birminghamal.gov/2021 to find out more about the budget. And also, tonight's call will be online at birminghamal.gov on tomorrow. And before I toss it back to you, Mayor, our final question of the evening says, Mr. Mayor, what can we as neighborhood leaders say to citizens to let them know that everything is going to be all right?
You can say just that, but I also want to give this charge to neighborhood officers. You all have a tremendous, very fair, very realistic expectation that your city councilors and your mayor and your municipal government that you give your tax dollars to is to provide basic city services. And we're going to continue to meet that mark, and we're okay with you all sharing your concerns, issues, questions, complaints, and driving us and holding us accountable. But as neighborhood leaders, I want you to hold your residents accountable for their behavior that is counterproductive to the pride and love and commitment you have to keep your neighborhood clean and safe. There may be a lot of things we can't do about criminal behavior because it's unpredictable. It's inside someone's home. Some of it's out of our control. But there's a lot of things you can do about pride, which has no price tag on it, and telling people if you get off a certain exit, whether it's Avenue I or the Parkway East, you're headed home. You live in this neighborhood. There is no reason you should roll down your window and throw the trash out of your car because you're a few blocks from your own home. There is no reason when you walk to the neighborhood convenience store or gas station or any store that when you walk back, whatever you purchase, if you eat it or finish drinking it before you get home, you drop it on the ground. You live in this neighborhood. Don't hesitate, neighborhood leaders, to call out the bad behavior. Don't hesitate to call out the nasty behavior, the inappropriate behavior of your own neighbors being nasty in their own neighborhood. Call them out. Blast them. Put them on Front Street. They need to hear it. They live here too. Doesn't matter if you are a renter or a buyer. You live here. Take pride in where you live. Do the right thing.
Your final thoughts for tonight, sir?
Oh, final thoughts. I think that's a great thought to end on, actually. This is tough times, but I'm extremely proud to be in the trenches with all of you all as leaders, whether it's faith-based or neighborhood leaders or ACE participants or young professionals or members of the Small Business Council. And there are many things you can be doing on a Tuesday night, but you spent this time with us to hear some of this tough news. I'm always appreciative of the tough questions. You all know I'm going to always be straight up with you and answer the questions. Do me a favor. Please be safe and stay COVID-free in these